Thank you for your kind words, Dr. Chairperson. And I bring greetings to you from Hyderabad. Uh, and thank the organizers for having given me this very, very interesting topic, PCOS concerns in midlife and beyond. As the chairperson has just introduced, the polycystic ovarian syndrome has been diagnosed in the year 1935 by a group of people, and especially Steen Leventhal. So since then, a long way has gone through, and then even today, the PCOS has been a very, very topic of interest and a very, very concerning topic, especially for us who are dealing with metabolic disorders. Why? I'm going to tell you in the course of time. The PCOS, as you can see here, in the the normal ovary may have only one cyst or two during the menstrual period, but here you can see many cysts in the ovaries. And to diagnose a polycystic disease, there should be more than 10 cysts of 2 to 8 millimeters. I'm not going to go into details about what is polycystic disease per se, because that is not in the purview of this talk. So what is PCOS in midlife and beyond? It's the most common endocrine disorder in women of reproductive age group and beyond. Okay, affects women's health and quality of life across the life course during different stages of life. It's not just the reproductive age. The PCOS phenotype can change, therefore requires a personalized diagnostic approach and treatment. With increasing age, the syndrome evolves from a reproductive disease to a more metabolic disorder. The aim of the current discussion is to review the published literature and research that has been presented so far regarding menopausal women with PCOS, as well as associated changes in hormone profile, lipid profile, and various metabolic changes that occur in a woman's life. Also, contribute and raise awareness about the risk of hypertension and CVDs in the postmenopausal women with PCOS. So this PCOS is changing women's health paradigm. As you can see, the reproductive disorders come down, the problems come down, and as they come down, the metabolic disease goes up. Yeah, it starts in the young age and lasts through the old age, and hence it's a multidisciplinary approach starting from pediatric, dermatology, gynecology, endocrinology, diabetology, cardiology, and psychiatry as well, and geriatry. So that is how it is so important. So coming to the prevalence of PCOS in India in general, very, very few studies are done across India. There are some few studies done on very few women I found in the literature from Chennai, Mumbai, Andhra Pradesh, Delhi, and recently from PGI Chandigarh, and all show that the incidence that is diagnosed is about 22.5% as per the 2021 statistics, and no studies done on midlife and beyond, unfortunately, in India. Coming to the global prevalence, from all studies, what is seen is about 3 to 20%, and 70% of them is undiagnosed. So what we see is only the tip of iceberg. So coming to the pathophysiology in brief, so it's a multifactorial disease, just like diabetes. There is a genetic predisposition to excess ovarian androgen secretion, which leads to polycystic ovarian on one hand. Then there is a genetic and dietary factors influence insulin secretion or action, which leads to insulin resistance and hyperinsulinemia. So this polycystic ovary is actually, cysts are many, but action is poor. So and it also alters the hormones reproductive hormones, and there is an increase in that testosterone level, and there is also increase in the LH level and reduction in the FSH, leading to disproportionate ratio between LH and FSH, and for ultimately leading to anovulation and infertility. So there is a in PCOS people there is a pulsatile increase in the gonadotropin release hormones to the pituitary, which is again leading to disproportionate ratio of LH and FSH, leading to anovulation. So it's a hyperandrogenemia and insulin resistance, ultimately affecting the liver as well, and then it gives rise to not only anovulation and infertility, it has insulin resistance, which is cause and effect of this problem, and then also hirsutism is one of the main presenting symptoms of PCOS, especially in the reproductive age and adolescence. So menopausal transition, this may be important to know to all of us. During the menopausal transition, several hormonal and metabolic changes take place in women. These androgen levels are known to remain stable or even to increase as women enter menopause, while at the same time estrogen levels decrease dramatically. So there is, as women became more androgenic, several features such as insulin resistance, chronic inflammation, abnormal adiposity, and dyslipidemia tend to worsen. Although ovarian androgen secretion capacity declines with age, in both healthy women and in women with PCOS, it remains enhanced until the late reproductive years in PCOS. So that's the difference. And the adrenal androgen also remains pronounced up to the menopause in women with PCOS, indicating that exposure to hyperandrogenism persists for a long time in these women. So ultimately, all these lead to long-lasting hyperandrogenism effect, leading to unfavorable hormonal and metabolic changes related to menopause and expose these women to increased health risks. So these are the aging effect of the PCOS. The reproductive hormones has been found to extend beyond that of a woman without PCOS due to a higher adrenal and ovarian androgen levels. They're more likely to experience regular menstrual cycles as they age because of the natural decline in androgen levels. And then for some women who struggle with infertility, they may have a higher likelihood of pregnancy as they get older. Coming to the hyperandrogenemia, long-term exposure to these elevated androgens can cause excessive facial and body hair like that of male pattern, hair loss or even balding like that of male pattern again. Now, although older women with PCOS have few hot flashes and episodes of sweating, they also have significantly more hirsutism. These dermatological effects can again cause a low self-esteem and body image of these women. So we are mostly concerned about metabolic changes with the age. This happens to everyone, but more so with the people and women living with PCOS. So the central factor is the insulin resistance, which again leads to dysfibrinolysis, macrovascular disease, dyslipidemia, obesity, and hypertension. So the prevalence of metabolic syndrome in PCOS is reported to be as high as 43 to 46% using the NCEP criteria, which was found in the Metabolism 2003, way back. So PCOS and metabolic syndrome are part of the triangle. Why? Because both of them share hyperinsulinemia. So I'll be dealing with some of these metabolic disorders that occur because of PCOS in aging women: hypertension, obesity, dyslipidemia, diabetes, obstructive sleep apnea, CV disease, and psychiatric disorders. So coming to the hypertension, why? There is reduced vascular compliance, endothelial dysfunction. In the morning talk, it was discussed at length that there is a endothelial dysfunction in obese patients, particularly because of increased inflammation, which causes endothelial dysfunction. Hyperinsulinemia, hypertrophic effect on the vascular, endothelial, and smooth muscle cells. Then there is increased level of plasminogen activator 1, and also increased insulin resistance of the arterial endothelial cells is associated with reduced synthesis of nitric oxide and increased synthesis of vasoconstricting agents, and so oxidative stress. Now, dyslipidemia, more than 70% of PCOS patients have dyslipidemia, and then added to the PCOS, the other risk factors are obesity and aging. And because of hyperinsulinemia and hyperandrogenemia, both of them again lead to dyslipidemia. So what is the dyslipidemia particular to PCOS? Increased TG, increased LDL-C, and reduced HDL-C. This is common to all the diabetic patients. So obesity, again, PCOS is maybe a cause of obesity at the same, particularly in the aging women. Once the menopause occurs, they develop central obesity, and obesity again is a causative factor for PCOS. So both are interrelated. And then they have abdominal and visceral obesity. More so, people with PCOS definitely have visceral, the so-called normal obesity, normal weight obesity. And then adipose tissue, abnormal function and reduced vascularity. So the increased adipose tissue in these women have abnormal function and reduced vascularity, again leading to more inflammation and increased risk of insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, and chronic heart disease, and androgens, again hypertrophy of adipocytes. So these are all the causes of obesity in PCOS. So coming to the topic of our interest, diabetes mellitus, up to 16% of PCOS women can be converted to IGT per year. This may be again underreported because PCOS itself is underreported. So baseline IGT, 2% risk of progressing to type 2 diabetes per year, then threefold increased risk of GDM, and then the most high risk factors among for these patients are BMI more than 25, waist more than 80, and then family history of diabetes, past history of GDM, and all women with PCOS must be screened with 75 grams of glucose and 2 hours post 75 grams of glucose. Obstructive sleep apnea is another very important disease to consider, which is 3 times more common in PCOS, independent CV risk factor, and correlates with waist-hip ratio. Then CV risk is increased because of increased intimomedial thickness, and we all know that there is a conventional cardiovascular risk calculators have not been validated in women with PCOS. Now PCOS and cancer is also very much higher, 3 to 4 times more in the women. That is because of the oligoamenorrhea in women with PCOS may predispose to endometrial hyperplasia and later carcinoma. However, cancer of ovary and breast is less common with PCOS. It's not related to PCOS. So these are the things that one must do in every clinic. Smoking history has to be taken at every visit, and obesity anthropometry should be done at every visit. Blood pressure has to be checked at every visit, and complete lipid profile should be done at least once in 2 years, but if it is abnormal, then as indicated by the physician, OGTT must be done for all women every 2 years. So, these are the risk factors I already mentioned: age above 40 years, ethnicity, physical inactivity, smoking, waist ratio, BMI, hypertension, family history, and previous GDM. These are the psychological issues. And then role of a physician: screen for metabolic complications for all women who come to your clinic, screen for psychological issues, stress on lifestyle modifications and counseling, and long-term studies are important, and this is a call to do research on PCOS and metabolic disorders. So my conclusion of this talk is PCOS does not disappear as women get into menopause. Reproductive hormones and the lipid profile in women with PCOS differ from those in women without PCOS after menopause. Women with PCOS reach menopause a few years later and have lower serum FSH compared with age-matched controls. The inflammatory and metabolic parameters worsen with age, putting women with PCOS at increased risk of lifelong health issues beyond menopause, especially the risk of developing CVD, hypertension, and type 2 diabetes. All providers involved in the multidimensional care of women with PCOS should be aware of these long-term health risks to provide appropriate counseling, screening, and management options. This supports the need for treatment involving dietary and lifestyle modifications. And I thank each and every one of you for having listened to this. Thank you very much.
Thank you.